Miami has Smoke's criteria of winning the national championship this year, but Mario Cristobal will hold them back. I'll tell you why. The ultimate college football show starts right now. Welcome to the Ultimate College Football Show. I'm your host, Smoke Dixon. I'm here with my guy, Bud Elliott, national college football analyst and co-host of the Cover 3 podcast. Bud, what are you looking forward to today?
Smoke, want to talk a little ACC quarterbacks with you, maybe a little Texas chat, and I'd love to hear your Mario take. We were just working on our coaching rankings on the Cover 3 podcast, so that was fun today.
Man, you know I always have a Mario take, and I always have some hot take. But let's get to our opening kick. But we waste no time around here by getting you on the hot seat, man. From IG, FSU Mark 53 says, outside of Clemson and Miami, who could win the ACC championship this season?
Okay, so there's probably three teams that, if something happened to Clemson and Miami, right? Maybe their quarterbacks don't stay healthy. We'll talk about quarterbacks later. I think you got to look at Louisville. I think you got to look at SMU. And I think probably Georgia Tech. I mean, Georgia Tech's a little iffy, but Louisville and SMU, I think, are the top two challengers if you want to go outside those top two. And the Vegas odds kind of show that. I mean, Clemson is extremely – they're not quite odds on. They're not – you don't have to lay money to win 100, but you don't get much back for plopping your $100 down. And Miami, kind of similar. So Vegas sees this as an extremely top-heavy league. But if I have to pick one or two, I think Louisville and SMU kind of fit that bill.
But, Bud, you know me. I want the real and uncut. I want you exactly to the point. Who, outside of Clemson and Miami, do you believe is going to win it this year, man? Come on with
it. I'm going to take Louisville.
Okay.
If it's a sleeper, and as we'll discuss later in the show, I think I like a lot of the roster around new quarterback Miller Moss, and I really think Jeff Brom is a heck of a coach. Every coach that comes into Purdue after Jeff Brom has left, basically every coach before, shows just how difficult it is to win at Purdue, and he was winning, 6, 7, 8. I think one year he won 9 ball games at Purdue. The guy is just an excellent football coach. I like their receiving core an awful lot. I think they'll be pretty darn good on defense this year. They fixed the secondary. I talked to Jody Dimling recently of our Louisville side. He did a nice job kind of filling me in on how happy they are with some of the transfers they took in the portal at defensive back. So if I got to pick a sleeper, my sleeper's Louisville.
Man, I'm with you. And there's other couple of factors I'm going with you with that as well. What they've done in the trenches on both ends. On the defensive side, just having veterans that come back with depth. But also, like you said, on the back end, Ron English is back there. And we know that Ron English knows something about that secondary. And when you talk about secondary play, you talk about heating guys up. So I think on defense, they're pretty good. But we all understand the real reason why we even have them in the category as such is because of quarterback play. You and I have been going back and forth with ranking our top 5 quarterbacks throughout the P4 conferences. Today, we're on the ACC. Now, I know how you feel about your Florida State guy. I'm more of a Clemson guy, but we sat there and we went through it, and we just ranked them out. So let's see our top 5, and let's go with it. Now, before we do all this now, Bud, we have to get into it, and we have to talk about the reasons of picking these guys and our criteria. I'm going to start with mine. My criteria is a person that always elevates their team. What I mean by elevation, that means you are the reason why they're going to win. A win with quarterback, a win because of quarterback. I want to go with more because of your talent set. Now, I always want a quarterback that can play within the pocket and escape when needed with his feet, not a run-first guy. So let me hear your criteria on the reason why you picked your top 5.
So I think in the ACC you have a lot of guys with a fairly proven track record of playing at a high level. I mean, there's 7 or 8 dudes who have started quite a few ball games. So I did want there's no real freshman who I feel like this kid's a stud, 5-star coming out, got to elevate him early because this league doesn't recruit at a real high level. At least most of the teams don't. So you had a lot of guys with proven production. I did factor in upside, maybe guys I think could take a jump. Had to kind of measure, as we saw 5 there with Darian Mensah. How big of an adjustment is he going to have to the quality of play in the ACC compared to what he had in the AAC since he's coming over, from Tulane? But for me, it was like, what have you shown on the field? What do I think your upside is, and what I want you to quarterback my team. And of course, there's different fits for different schemes. But I think you have a lot of proven commodities in this league. Not sure how high end some of them are, but some of them I think do have some real upside.
Now I'm gonna hold you accountable to that. Now you said track record and ability on the football field. Now when we looked at our list, top 5 we're pretty close.
Yeah.
Our top 2 we got Cade Klubnik and Carson Beck. Now what separates those 2 guys, in your opinion, from the rest of the guys? And we'll get to those guys later on.
I think it's that Cade has, at least as far as we know, 2 healthy UCLs, and Carson Beck is coming back from Tommy John surgery.
Right.
So to me, I'm going to bet on the guy who had the much better season last year. And you could tell me, hey, Georgia's receiving core fell apart due to all their guys getting arrested, and that's true, it did, right? And the guys he was throwing to were not the guys that he anticipated throwing to. I think if we had done this show last year about this time. But Cade had an awesome year. He really elevated. He also is a real threat with his legs. He was kind of a sneaky part of that Clemson run game. My friend David Hale from ESPN had this stat. He said 8 quarterbacks in the playoff era have had 4,100 yards and 43 touchdowns. Cade Klubnik is one. The others include 5 Heisman winners, 2 finalists, all taken within the first 10 picks of the NFL draft. Stats aren't everything, but he really did produce at a super high level last year in pretty much every game.
Now, when you start talking about stats aren't everything, stats mean a lot, but you really have to go in and study the stats. And when you go in and you study Cade Klubnik at our number 1 position, our quarterback ranking, you've seen growth from year 1 to year 2, and you've just seen a guy just come in and just kept getting better and better and better. We've all just beat him up over the years of his inability to have good days and bad days. But he did throw for something crazy like 36 touchdowns last year. And I'm one of the guys that kind of predicted that he was going to be somewhere around there and closer in terms of breaking the record. But whenever Coach Sweeney has the continuity with the offensive line, the receivers, and the quarterback with Cade Klubnik, we understand there's reasons to feel real good about the real Death Valley, according to the people in South Carolina.
100%. I think Klubnik is the reason why, or one of the reasons why Clemson is the prohibitive favorite to win the ACC. On the flip side, we were comparing him to Carson Beck. I think Carson Beck, if healthy, has a ton of ability. He was a lot of people's top quarterback entering the season last year, and there's a reason Miami paid up for him, right? If he's back and healthy, I think he could be really good. But I think there are some questions about how good this Miami receiving core really is. Last year, Cam Ward played awesome, but he also was throwing to a lot of guys who are pretty darn talented, and almost all those guys are gone. Now, Miami did a great job going out to the transfer portal and getting some guys with some proven production, but I'm not sure that the guys Miami got in this year's portal are quite as good as the ones they had on last year's team. So we'll have to see just how well he plays down there in Miami. But I think almost all of the ACC teams, with the exception of one, would be really happy to have Carson back.
Listen, a lot of teams, Georgia might even be happy about it if we talk about the other conference. But you and I have sat down, we talked about it earlier today. Cade Klubnik, continuity receivers, breaking records. I've gone on the stance of saying I think that he gets close to 50 touchdowns this year. And you feel real comfortable about Clemson winning the ACC, getting the conversation of getting to the national championship. Now, with all that said, is he a true contender for the Heisman Trophy this year in New York?
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, people like stats. He's going to come into the season with a lot of hype. Voters also historically like really good records. I mean, Clemson's chances of winning 10, 11, 12 ball games in regular season plus a potential conference championship game are really good. So he's going to have the numbers. He's the face of the program. I do think he's got a really good shot. Perhaps the question is going to be will he have the marquee games down the stretch to have those real marquee moments? And Clemson's schedule this year is pretty favorable. I think he almost needs South Carolina to be good in order to and win that game. Obviously, he lost the game last year to have that kind of marquee moment to put him over the top. Almost all your Heisman winners end up having a Heisman moment, if you will. And just with how down the ACC is, I think, relative to some of the other leagues, I don't know that he's going to have a whole lot of chances to get that. So South Carolina at the end of the year will be pretty important.
Well, listen, you said it. Stats mean a ton, and I think they're great. And I think that's where he's going to separate himself, with the stats and his ability with the receivers around him. We understand that when you get to New York, you have to have that Heisman moment. And if we're looking at Lenore Sellers in South Carolina, we know that's going to be a marquee matchup, rivalry, ability to play forget it. And it's for the state. You're winning the state's trophy, but you're also showing America that you are one of those top quarterbacks that can go out there and they be getting close to that 50 touchdown mark, and they might be undefeated. So it'd be hard not to say that he's going to end up in New York.
I agree with you there. I mean, other marquee games potentially, obviously the opener against LSU. If he plays well in that, and I think that's probably pretty important. If he plays like he did last year against Georgia when they lost like 30-3 or whatever that was, it was a stomping. Then that's going to be hard to overcome potentially. At Georgia Tech could be a game that is nationally televised early in the season. Georgia Tech had a nice year last year. At UNC with the Belichick factor, even if Carolina isn't any good, there's potential that ESPN wants to prop that game up because of the Belichick factor. But after that, I mean, SMU, they're going to need to be fairly decent to get that game on national status. At Louisville late in the year certainly could be one. But yeah, I mean, this is a schedule tailor-made for some stats, Smoke, because a lot of these defenses are not it.
Now, listen, we played nice for too long. We got to take these gloves off. The difference between you and I is at the number 4 position. You have Kevin Jennings, and I have Miller Moss. Now, why do you have Kevin Jennings in the 4th position so high?
He led SMU to the playoff last year. I think that team was going nowhere fast when they had Preston Stone playing, right? You watch them. They come out of the gate against Nevada. They struggle. Didn't they lose at home to BYU, I think, because they wouldn't put Jennings in for the longest time. And we were sitting there on cover 3 and watch this week after week. I'm like, look, I understand that the deference and the respect being shown to Preston Stone, because he did lead him to a pretty nice season in 2023, led them to the American Conference Championship. But 24 ain't 23, and Stone just didn't have it last year. He had not really recovered from the injury, I don't think, or at least didn't show that he was playing with confidence that he had pre-injury before he broke his leg in the game before that American Conference Championship game in 23. And I mean, Jennings torched Louisville. He was huge for them in so many games, and I wonder if we suffer from a little recency bias, because you know what, Penn State's defense was all over him, and they got overwhelmed, and they're not as good as Penn State was. But I think he's a really, really promising player who I know they liked a lot, and I do think it said something that they finally went to him and benched Preston Stone. So I like Kevin Jennings a lot. I don't really dislike Miller Moss. I think he's just fine.
Bud.
He got benched at USC. USC clearly,
you're trying to kill.
You don't leave USC for Louisville unless USC doesn't want you.
You're trying to kill my guy. I'm gonna have to push back on him.
I like him. He's fine.
You don't like him. That was kind of like a sneak little subtle jab, poking my side, hoping I don't feel it. But that's a really gutting knife wrench type to my stomach. But here's what I'm gonna say about your guy, Tyler Van Dyke. You remember that name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did transfer to SMU. Rhett Lashley and Tyler Van Dyke in Miami put up crazy numbers, right? With those two, good things happen. And you don't go into the portal to go get your former guy that put up crazy numbers that can play, like I said, criteria of a quarterback is playing from the pocket. And that's where I ding your guy, Kevin Jennings, a little. And that's where you saw when they played against Penn State made him a pass-first, never-run quarterback, and he struggled with it. But with that said, you try to diss my guy, Miller Moss. I'm going to go ahead and win it with it. Miller Moss, Louisville, number 4. Real simple for me. Veteran, operates with quickness, rhythm, precision, accuracy, timing, touch. I mean, he got ran out of there maybe because Lincoln Riley felt a little cold feet and didn't want to blame himself for the actions of his team. But when you cut the film on, Miller Moss was dangerous, man. And when you give Coach Brom, a veteran quarterback, we've seen what he's done with Tyler Shaw, we saw that, into an NFL player, I think that Miller Moss is number 4. And at some point, I don't know if your guy Kevin Jennings is going to finish the entire season as the starting quarterback. Because earlier on, I was listening real clearly. You said they benched Preston Stone for Kevin Jennings. So we know that at any point, they want to win games. And with the guy that can play the quarterback position from the pocket, that can throw the ball, that's what SMU likes to do. They don't like to run with the quarterback. They like to throw with the quarterback. I think your guy might not finish out the season taking snaps from the center.
That would be surprising to me. I kind of read the Van Dyke thing as hey man, like we know the college career didn't work out, right? Like you got hurt, you had a bad year at Miami the year before you went to Wisconsin. You haven't been a good quarterback in college football for really since what, 2022? Like come here, learn the system, maybe like transition into a GA role, like not a guy that's going to play in the league, right? So, come learn our system, maybe go into coaching. That would be kind of shocking to me if Van Dyke beats out Kevin Jennings for this job. But I mean, he does have a lot of arm talent. I guess you could never say never, right? And like I thought it was just kind of a luxury for SMU to have a guy like Tyler Van Dyke there as a backup quarterback. I think a lot of teams would really like him as a backup if you have to put him in as a pinch. But he just never really seemed the same guy to me after the injuries that he suffered in 2022. On Miller Moss, like again, I don't hate Miller Moss. I think that kind of in that 3 to 8 range in this list are actually, I know this is not great for like arguing on the show, but man, like 3 to 8 to me is very similar. You could kind of just randomize this stuff up like, yeah, okay, I could see it. I think there's kind of a drop off after 8, to be honest, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the bottom half of this league. But Miller Moss, man, he had a lot of games. It was like, ugh, like okay, he killed Rutgers, okay, he played well against Maryland. Wisconsin team that didn't make a bowl game, right? And Utah State, but 5.5 yards attempt against Michigan. Okay, they won that game, but not because of him. The Minnesota game, right? 5.3 yards per attempt, lost that one. Penn State, 6.5 per attempt, lost that one. Washington, 5.9, again, another game under 6, well under 7, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. I kind of I like this guy if it's all schemed up for him and you got nice pieces around him and the competition stinks. So at Louisville, check, check, check. But I don't think he elevates that team. I don't think he's anywhere close to what Tyler Shuck was.
The conversation is not between Miller and Tyler. The conversation is how does Miller Moss in the top 5 quarterback ranking? That's a conversation. So let's stay and don't move the goalpost. Let's stay in it.
All right.
You said Penn State. Penn State defense was pretty good, right?
It is pretty good.
Washington's defense was pretty good. Now, Minnesota, they grind you out. And now when you talk about Michigan, Michigan's always played a good brand of defense. So you're talking about a guy that you say didn't really struggle. Like most quarterbacks, they have their issues, the ups and downs, but he's figured it out. The turnover to touchdown ratio wasn't that poor. And again, how many times are we going to say that Lincoln Riley did not do this guy justice by just giving him an opportunity to just figure it out? Like the talent is there. And when you give Coach Brom, again, I'm going to tell you, you're not listening. You're just kind of hearing me. A veteran quarterback at Louisville, we understand what can happen. He said, right scheme, check. Quarterback whisperer, check. Pieces around him, check. Running game, check. But listen, with all that said, got to move this on. We're going to talk about the quarterback that you and I believe that could actually get up into that top 5. That's not in our top 5 right now.
All right, so we can move it on. I do think that I like the situation Moss is in. Mm-hmm. I think he will play well for them. Mm-hmm. I think there's a whole lot of guys who could play just about as well for Louisville as Miller Moss. Like, I don't think he's a draft. Like I don't think he's like a guy that's going to get drafted. I don't think he's a special player.
We can take a bet on that. We can take a bet on the draft thing because we.
All right, cool. How much?
Well, we'll talk about that off camera.
All right, well, commercial break. We'll do that. All right. Who do you have as a guy who could emerge and kind of get up into this list who you didn't have on your list?
You know what? I'm going to go with Eli Holston out there at Pitt. I think that before injury last year, he's playing a pretty good brand of football. Transfer from Alabama. The skill set that you want and ability to process, throw with anticipation, timing, accuracy, has enough mobility and ability to escape within the pocket and just find little subtle movements to extend plays. I think you give this guy another year under his belt, healthy, comes back and plays good football. I think he's a guy that can play himself in that top 5.
I think that's a really, really good pick. There's a couple guys I considered here. So Steve Angeli played, I would say, fine, admirably, I guess, for Notre Dame in that bowl game and also in the playoff game where he had to come in. He completed some passes. He wasn't amazing, but Kyle McCord was not amazing for Ohio State before he went to Syracuse. So Steve Angeli is a guy I think maybe could elevate into that role. There's actually quite a few. I agree. Holstein is a dude who jumped out last year initially with big numbers. I was kind of skeptical. I was like, oh, man, I don't know. He's getting away with a lot of passes that should be picked, but just weren't picked so far. And then that kind of all, kind of came home to roost, so to speak. So I think he's probably a pretty nice fit there. I don't think Gio Lopez at Carolina, but it wouldn't totally shock me. He did play well for South Alabama when he was healthy. Again, speaking of health, Kyron Drones at Virginia Tech. I know they shut him down for spring due to the arm injury, but if he's fully healthy, he has the build. Now he's got to do a lot of things better, clearly. But you're seeing on the screen here, he really can scoot. They're going to run the Philip Montgomery offense this year in Blacksburg, so we've seen that quite a while at Baylor and at Tulsa and at some other stops. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but we do know they want to use some quarterback mobility. Run some quarterback bash concepts there, and maybe they feel a little bit better this year about the receivers staying healthy in Blacksburg. So there are certainly some options who could elevate into that top 5. I don't think those spots 3 through 8 are safe at all. I think 1, 2, as long as Beck is healthy, to me, are fairly well locked in.
Look at you talking about QB bash, QB run. Now, off camera, and you've always admitted to this, you are a Florida State homer. We haven't talked anything Florida State at all. I know they have a new transfer quarterback in there, Thomas Castellanos. What's the expectation for Thomas and your Florida State nasty Noles this year?
Well, I think they're going to run the heck out of him. He went to Boston College from UCF. They were going to run a pro-style offense. Obviously, he didn't choose Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien, came in when Castellanos was already there. He got benched last year and lost the job and basically quit. But at the same time, maybe that's a wake-up call. Hey, you're not an NFL quarterback. There's a reason teams like Georgia and Florida State and others recruited you to play running back when you're coming out of high school. But who he actually did work pretty well with was Gus Malzahn, a guy who runs a spread option type of offense, and that is Florida State's new offensive coordinator. So I think they've been pretty clear, hey, you came here to run. You're not a great thrower. We don't need you to be a great thrower, right?
Dang.
You're here to run. If he stays healthy, I think he'll rush for more than 1,000 yards and throw off play action, see how that works. I think it's if healthy, a very high floor pick for them in the portal, but also a very low ceiling because he's not a good thrower of the football.
See, you put those goggles back on, and you're not even you didn't even want to give him a chance to throw. You're just like Billy O'Brien. Just take the guy just because he's in a 5-foot category, not the 6-foot category, is not your perfect pocket quarterback that you're just saying offhand he can't throw. But I would say that he throws better than what you're giving him credit for. He's improved every year in terms of accuracy, understanding how to put the ball in the right place, throw it to the right colors, his. But like you said, in the right offense, with the right team, I think he can function at a very high level and become that playmaker. And in college football, you and I both understand the best way to get the best out of your quarterback and to neutralize the defense is a mobile quarterback. Go ahead.
I totally agree with you, and I think he's a good thrower. How do I say this? He can execute some passing concepts when the defense is really focused on the run.
Agreed.
If you look at the games he plays when he has to pass more than 25 times, the results are horrific. So if he has to win the game with his arm because the defense is able to stop the run without totally committing everybody to the run, then whoever team he's on, the Noles this year, they're in trouble. If you can ask the guy to pass 18 times, almost all off play action, quick game RPO type stuff, not dropping back and reading it, then I think that you can manage it and because he is such a threat with his legs. So to me, it's how effective is the run game.
Similar
if they can't run
guy.
the ball, they're dead in the water.
Similar to your guy, Kevin Jennings, but you want to knock Castellanos, but you want to boost up Kevin Jennings. But I think
Jennings is way better thrower.
I think he is a way better thrower, but I think both of those guys' strengths are their legs and their ability to extend plays, not play from within the pocket. But again, that's why you and I both have this top 5 list. And let's recap it real quick. You and I both have everything straight and even except in that number 4 position with Miller Moss. Our number 2 guy, Carson Beck, we both agree that at some point he's going to have to show that he can lead that group with solid receivers, really good offensive line. And speaking of offensive line, they've killed it this week in terms of recruiting. They landed 5-star Jackson Cantwell, one of your favorite guys out of the chute. Now, we got our guy in here, Tom Loy, national recruiting analyst. If you want anything to know about any recruit in America, you are the guy. Now, before we get into the Jackson Cantwell commitment, we saw our guy Mario cheering away.
Let's go! Enjoy it. Go in there. Let's go, brother.
Now, Tom, we know that he likes to have his Cuban coffee, and we saw the fist pump coming. How did they end up getting this whole entire Jackson Cantwell deal done?
Relationships. Obviously, everybody's going to point towards NIL and the money and the financial aspect, which Jackson politely declined any comment on and said it's a private matter, and rightfully so, to be completely honest. But they did a great job with relationships from start to finish, and it started with head coach Mario Cristobal, Alex Mirabal, offensive line coach. Jackson Cantwell, called the best offensive line coach in America. Dennis Smith behind the scenes doing a great job, kind of their working as their GM in a sense. So phenomenal job with relationships. He's going to be able to have an opportunity to play early. But this was pretty wild back and forth. I know we talked about this for weeks leading up to his decision. And it was Oregon a little bit. Then he had Georgia. But what's kind of wild is behind the scenes, I was told that he returned from Athens because there was a lot of buzz about Georgia. They thought they were going to get it done. His last trip, just days before he commits to Miami, was in Athens, meeting with Kirby Smart and the rest of the staff there. So a lot of buzz there. He leaves. He gets back home to Nixon, Missouri on Sunday. And that's when I was told somebody in Miami's building was told from Drew Rosenhaus and his team, the agency, that he was going to Miami. And the decision was made. Now, what was wild was that I was told Mario Cristobal was not informed. They kept it kind of quiet. So as he was spending the next 24 to 48 hours recruiting Jackson, staying on top of him, trying to get it done, they wanted to keep this as quiet as possible. So then I was told Tuesday, I believe he committed Tuesday. So on Monday is actually when Cristobal found out. So yes, we saw the video and the hype. And obviously you don't really know because there were so many twists. There was a lot of genuine enthusiasm. That wasn't just faked for the cameras. He knew that there was a finish line that they needed to cross. So pretty wild how it played out. The Miami staff kind of keeping it from their head coach, which, you know, some people think that that's a normal thing. It's definitely not. I mean, as you can attest to. So pretty wild last 48 hours. A lot of buzz for a while. Oregon, Georgia, but Miami got it done. And like I said, relationships were a huge, huge factor.
Tom, listen, as a former GM for the University of Maryland, Mike Locksley, our head coach, was the first to know if anyone was going to commit to the University of Maryland. Now, I get he was fist pumping, the Cuban coffee kicked in. We know that he's an energy guy, and that's not fake. That's real.
100%.
And if it's an offensive lineman, we know that that's his forte. But him not knowing until right up to the 11th hour is surprising. Now, you said, was there rumors of it might get out, or is it the Cantwell family not wanting that to get out? Or was it something that was always understood? The guy that was recruiting him was the only one that found out about the information and extend that to the head coach later on.
I think it was more about just creating as much excitement and buzz and keeping it as in-house as possible because so many people for such a long time were talking Oregon versus Georgia. Yeah, Miami's in there. But really, if you look back to when the meat of this recruitment, Miami was talked about early on as a favorite. He'd been there a bunch of times, but everybody just kept pointing towards final visits to Georgia and Oregon, and that was the strongest connections and Nike money and things like that. But in reality, it really came down to relationships. And again, we probably shouldn't have looked past the fact that he called Alex Mirabal the best offensive line coach in America. So pretty incredible job. I think the twists and turns are done. It's only May. We have till December till he puts pen to paper. I think that the Jackson's going to stick. He feels very happy with his decision.
So we hope that he stays there. We know that this is a continuous game of recruiting, and you got to hold on all the way until December. Now on the West Coast, we speculated a little bit about the heater of what USC was on in terms of getting commits across the nation, especially in Georgia.
Oh, yeah. Happens every year.
It happens every year. They got some sad news. 5-star linebacker Xavier Griffin decommitted from there. What's the latest that you're hearing about that?
There was a point where I thought USC might stay in the picture, but I'm told that both sides are going to kind of move on. So the team I'm watching is Alabama, a team you're very familiar with. I believe the Crimson Tide are the team to beat right now, heading into some official visits. Got some key ones lined up, as you see on the screen here. He's going to take trips to Alabama, Florida State, Texas, Ohio State. The one that may or may not happen for an official visit is Georgia. He could easily sneak over there. Not a big deal. He can get to Athens fairly easily. So I'm not sure that an official visit's actually going to happen there, but I do expect him back in Athens. But again, the team to beat is the team that is where he and his family are originally from. He's from Alabama, some strong ties to Tuscaloosa in that area in general. So I like the Crimson Tide to get it done. And Xavier Griffin, we saw him at last year's Navy All-American Bowl. Just an incredible talent. He opened the week up with an interception. I mean, he moves well. He looks the part. This is a guy that our guy's director of scouting, Andrew Ivins, extremely high on. Thinks he's one of the top overall players in the country, listing him at number 8. So big time talent. And right now, I give the edge to the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Well, you can't talk Alabama without talking about those boys down the road. Let's recap just the weekend at Auburn. They had 2 top 60 prospects, defensive linemen down there. You got my guy, Anthony, great daggone nickname, Tank Jones, and Vonde Cleveland. Now, what can you tell us about where those 2 stand with the Auburn staff right now?
So Auburn made a move for sure with both of them. I think that I think with Vonde, it's a little more interesting. So he's a former Alabama commit, strongly considering Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Texas, Miami. I don't think Auburn is 100% the team to beat right this second, but I absolutely think that the Tigers made a move. This is a kid that has no fear leaving the state of Alabama and considering other options. He's been very high on Florida and Miami in particular, so long way to go there. But Anthony Tank Jones, you brought it up. There's another Anthony Jones out west, so I think calling him Tank Jones is nice because you can split him up. But Alabama, Miami, Oregon, Texas A&M, my crystal ball has been on Auburn for a long time. I don't necessarily feel all that great about it at this point. I think that Auburn's absolutely a contender. They can get it done. This one, he doesn't seem all that close to wanting to make a decision. I think he's going to take his time. We brought up Mario Cristobal. He likes Miami a lot. I think that the Canes are very much in contention, but I can't shake the fact that I went down to Mobile, spent some time with Tank, got around him, got around other people. There's a lot of people that want him to go to Auburn and others that want him to go to Alabama. I think a dark horse here that isn't talked about enough is Oregon. I think that his love for Dan Lanning, love for the Ducks, this kid, it wouldn't shock me at all to avoid disappointing different sides and different people. He may just leave home for Oregon.
Now, you're the guy that knows everything about everything, and if it moves in recruiting, you got it. Now, they had a bunch of prospects on campus, but who do you feel real comfortable about them landing from last weekend's visits?
I would say C.J. Hester, defensive back, Dalton Toothman, an offensive lineman, and Deron Parks, another offensive lineman. I think that those are the 3 that Auburn really moved the needle with. Christian Clemente over at Auburn 24/7, Auburn Undercover, does a phenomenal job. One of the truly best in the business covering a team on the recruiting side of things. He's been hinting at things trending this way for a long time. So if you're asking me for a best bet, I would put those 3, especially Toothman, in that category.
Now, we can't talk about Auburn without making our way down to Gainesville. Pretty good weekend. They landed a 3-star, Jameer Perez, down there this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And they hosted 3 big-time 5-star talent. Calvin Russell. You and I sat down and talked about him a little bit. Chauncey Kenyon. And also your guy, Felix Ojo. Now, how do these prospects, how do they feel about their visit this weekend, and what was your takeaway from it?
Yeah, big weekend. They had Luke Wafel there as well. Huge weekend in Gainesville. The 3 5-stars, it's hard to top that. But I think Felix Ojo is one, and Mike Roach has been all over this one. He and I have gone back and forth, and I think Texas is going to be really difficult to beat when it comes to Felix Ojo. But I will say this, dead serious. Florida made a huge move for him this weekend. I think that opened his eyes a lot. They're doing a great job there. Billy Napier's leading that program in the right direction. Obviously, we're gonna keep a close eye on DJ Lagway. But speaking of that, I think that the success of DJ Lagway and how he performs this year, that's going to be a key factor when it comes to Calvin Russell and his decision, keeping him in state. So keep an eye on that one. And then Chauncey Kenyon is going to be one that Florida, I've long considered as him either leaning or at least them strongly in play with Florida State and Miami. I expect Kenyon to stay in state. Georgia's probably the team outside the state that's making a move. But I think all in all, we don't know. They're not going to land all 3 5-stars. But if you can land one of this group, then you're going to look back, Billy Napier and his staff, you're going to call this weekend a huge success.
Now, you can't talk Florida again without talking about that cocktail party they usually play down in Jacksonville. Now, a guy that I'm familiar with as well, Darius Gray.
Yeah.
#1 interior lineman in the 2026 class. Big, massive, solid guy.
Yep.
Went down to Georgia this weekend. Any intel on this visit this weekend?
Yeah, it's not great news. Nothing went wrong. It wasn't the case where, I just don't think that Georgia is eventually going to be the landing spot as he inches closer to his final decision. This is a guy we've gotten to know extremely well. He was at the 2025 Navy All-American Bowl. He was extremely impressive, one of the top overall players in America. I mean, this is a kid that went there in San Antonio as a junior and outperformed a lot of guys that were heading off to college at that time. So with Georgia, I think they're in the mix, but I think this was the moment where they needed to really take it to another level. But I got to tell you, a source reached out to me today and said that North Carolina is the team to watch when it comes to Darius Gray. I was kind of leaning towards even putting in a prediction for LSU. I heard a lot of buzz about the Tigers, but keep an eye on North Carolina. Look for him to set an official visit soon in the near future. I think that Bill Belichick and those guys, and obviously stay locked to Inside Carolina because we're going to have it covered, but Darius Gray, North Carolina, I think things are trending in a positive way, at least at this point in May.
We know in recruiting, proximity is like key.
Yeah.
And from Richmond, Virginia to North Carolina, it's a pretty good, it's not that long of a haul, but a good enough drive to get there. But why North Carolina all of a sudden when we haven't been hearing anything about that with him?
It's the relationships, and we talked about it before with Jackson Cantwell and Mario Cristobal. I think that staff doing such a good job of making him a priority, that's really the key. And obviously NIL is getting in order when it comes to the Tar Heels, and there's just a lot of buzz around Bill Belichick. I mean, we talked about it as soon as he got hired. I mean, I think every show for the next month was all about what UNC was doing behind the scenes. So pretty intrigued. I would say that they are, the entire family, Darius Gray, everybody around him, pretty intrigued about a potential future in Chapel Hill.
Now, Tom, you came up here, seat wasn't hot, but we got a burning question, a viewer question for you.
Okay.
Just to get it done. Andrew, if Oregon lands in Tiano, that's my guy Manny.
Yep.
Any chance they make another run at Ely? And we're talking about Zion Ely.
Yeah.
Teammate, out of St. Francis.
They can. I do think Oregon leads for Manny, your guy. That I feel very good about. But long way to go there, obviously, as we know, especially when you're dealing with 5-star prospects. But with Zion Ely, they can try, but I don't think there's going to be any success. I think that Maryland is firmly cemented as the favorite right now. But I think the one outside of Maryland you got to keep an eye on is Auburn. I think the Tigers are ones that he continues to talk about. Maryland fans and everybody around him like to come at me on Twitter and think that I'm making things up and clickbait this and that. But I think Auburn's got a real shot there. I think that there's something there. Again, Oregon can try, and I really don't think that they are. I think they've kind of moved in different directions. But so I wouldn't really think that that's going to be a tandem that ends up in Eugene together.
There is a lot of St. Francis kids in the last couple of years that's made their way down to Auburn.
Yep.
So, yes, that is one that we got to keep our eye on.
Oh, yeah.
But Mike Loxley, one of the best in terms of closing and keeping. He lost me about 20-something years ago, but I'm not the type of talent that Zion Ely is.
And just quickly, when you bring up Loxley, I mean, I think that's the most important just for the viewers and everybody. If they win this year, they are going to have tremendous success on the recruiting trail. That's the only thing that people are talking about, other programs and things like that. If they lose, if they struggle, if there's job security chatter behind the scenes, that's what's going to make guys look elsewhere. But until that happens, he's doing a great job.
Listen, Tom, always great information. I appreciate you again. And if you want any more of Tom, keep up on the latest recruiting news from Tom and the team at 247sports.com. Odds on winning the SEC title again. We get to Texas sitting up at #1, and we got our pesky guy at Georgia at #2. But actually, we're bringing our guy Bud Elliott back in, and also we have our guy Brad Crawford join us so we can dive deeper into it. Last week, Brad, question was posed to me. Bud, you weren't around, but I'm going to get back to it. What team in this era right now could succeed and have the most dominance with NIL? And I said it was Texas. Now, Brad, how confident do you feel about the Longhorns this season?
Yeah, I think pressure's a privilege, man. And Sark's the only coach in the country that has back-to-back playoff semifinal appearances. I thought he did a great job last year balancing the reps as far as Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning's concerned. It's hard to start a veteran quarterback when you have the sexy 5-star number one player in the country behind him who's equally talented, if not better, than your starter. But Sark managed to do that. Now he has had some red zone issues execution-wise 2 years ago against Washington, corner of the end zone, and then last year obviously losing to Ohio State on that fumble return from Jack Sawyer. But I like Texas as the preseason front runner in the SEC. I think right now odds makers have it right. And this time last year in the offseason, a lot of us were kind of wondering, is Texas going to suffer some black and blue bruises in the SEC? Year one, they didn't suffer any of that. They made it to Atlanta.
When I look at this, I have a lot of confidence Texas is going to be a good team, but they are the betting favorite as we saw, but by a very slim margin. The SEC seems wide open this year. If you compare the odds for the SEC leader to those of the ACC leader, which Clemson basically even money, or for the Big Ten, you got some teams there in the mid twos. I mean, Texas sitting there plus 300, Georgia's 350, Bama's 500, LSU's 950. That shows me that the SEC is way more wide open than it's ever been. And while I think I have a lot of confidence in Texas to be a good team, I don't think that they are the prohibitive favorite to win the SEC, Brad's not arguing that either, but Arch Manning has to be who we think he is. They did lose an awful lot at receiver. They lost a good bit on the offensive line. Defensive line, they clearly have some concerns about. They took 5 defensive tackle transfers, right? And the secondary, I do think has a chance to be really nice. Sark's done a great job there. I have a lot of confidence they'll be a good team, but I don't think that they're like prohibitive, the favorite, and to the exclusion of all others.
Yeah, a lot of questions have been said about Clemson, losing some guys, adding guys in terms of the transfer portal, but they've also recruited a high clip. Right? And again, fellas, the way that college football is right now, it's just natural. You're going to lose a lot, you got to gain a lot. And that's where I think Brandon Harris has done a tremendous job in terms of building that roster. Now, our own Josh Pate sat down with Coach Sark last week to ask him about the state of the roster.
Yeah, I don't think we're a finished product. If I said we were, that'd probably be lying, right? We've had some young players that have grown up in our program that we're excited about on both sides of the line of scrimmage. We've brought in some transfers, most notably on the defensive side of the ball, that helped us this spring. We brought in a couple more in the spring portal window that I think are going to be great additions for us. But I think for us as a program, this summer is going to be huge. June and July, our skill development stuff that we work on. The team aspect of really bringing this team together. Our Culture Wednesdays are going to be big. Their work with Tori Becton, right, in the weight room, running in the Austin heat on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at 4 p.m, where it feels like the hottest place on the earth. But that's when we grow together as a team. And then training camp's going to be a big thing. And we've got to push these guys. We've got to remain demanding of them, of what the standard is around here, and instill it in them. And that's a responsibility on a lot of their teammates, too, to get that done. When you bring in new faces, we always try to ensure is that they acclimate to us. We don't acclimate to them. And so that's why we're so strategic and we really take our time when it comes to the portal. We just don't bring anybody in here. There's a lot of really good players out there. It's not just about any. It might not always be the best player. Yeah. It's the best player that fits us. And that's something that we've tried to do and hold on to. And so far it's worked out pretty good for us.
Man, great information from Coach Sark in that. But Brad, I'm going to come to you first. What was your takeaway from that?
I think he's confident in some of those defensive linemen that he signed in the portal. Bud's already mentioned that up front defensively and along the offensive line where you lose 4 starters, you've got to win in the trenches in the SEC. The good news for Sark is there's no need for motivation during fall camp. You open at defending champion Iowa State. That's all Texas fans should want right now, to see how good this team is from week 1. We're going to know early whether or not they're a legitimate contender. But, I feel pretty good about the offensive line, even though they're starting 4 new guys. Coaching, those are well-paid guys up front, and the coaching staff has proven to be a pretty good one in that position group.
I don't really know what else he could say. Like, he can't be like, I don't know how I feel about this team, given that we have Arch Manning. We just spent a boatload of money in the transfer portal in addition to all the cash we throw around there on the recruiting trail. So I think that it's good that he's confident in it. We're just going to have to see. To me, Texas has 4 games that it has to probably go 2-2 in to make the playoff. I don't know if 9-3 is going to be good enough here. I mean, like Florida, Ohio State, Georgia, and A&M. And if Oklahoma is actually like legitimately really improved, and I'll kind of believe it when I see it, then make it 5. But the other 7, like none of those teams are projected to make a bowl game. Kentucky, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Sam Houston, UTEP, San Jose State. So you kind of want to be 3-2 in the Ohio State, Florida, Oklahoma, Georgia, A&M part of your schedule if you want to make sure you make the playoffs. And I have pretty good confidence that Texas can do just that, if not better.
Yeah, you see, Bud, here's the thing again, and you and I usually get along well, but right now I'm taking the gloves off. Again, what's your prediction in terms of their schedule when you look at it, win-loss? Because you said 9-3. Are you?
No, I was saying, like, I'm not sure 9-3 gets them in because I think the bottom 7 teams are, like, they draw the worst teams in the SEC this year. Like, they have a cakewalk conference schedule.
Now, Brad,
it's about the same as last year outside
Right.
of the Ohio State opener. You know, they get kind of an inverse of that. Now, I will say no other team in college football has a bigger opportunity to impress the committee early than Texas does. If they win that opener at Ohio Stadium, I think you can go ahead and sharpie in the Longhorns as a playoff team, regardless of what happens, barring a huge face plant in the SEC. They don't have to get to Atlanta necessarily if they beat Ohio State, because we know the Buckeyes are likely going to be one of Big Ten's 3 or 4 selections.
Now, Brad, you touched on something earlier. You talked about the offensive line. I just want to revisit that a little bit. And you talked about continuity and gelling. How long do you think this team takes to get that real formula of winning football and gelling offensively, meaning in the offensive line, protecting the quarterback, but also executing that offense?
Yeah,
so
normally
I
I'd
actually
be
think
worried
Ohio
going
State
into
is a
the-
great opponent for them early because while it's a big-time marquee name opponent, we already did our summer school series with Dave Biddle on Cover 3 of Bucknuts. And guys, Ohio State lost a ton on the D-line. If I have to pick a top 5 type team to break in a new offensive line with on the road, I'm probably picking the Buckeyes with all due respect. They've got a whole lot of guys there who haven't played a lot of football, so it'll be inexperience against inexperience there with the Texas offensive line. I do think Texas' left tackle situation is pretty nice. My real concern, I think, is at that right tackle spot. When Banks went down last year in a couple games, the left tackle filled in and played admirably, but I'm not really sure what they're going to do there at right tackle. We'll have to see how that plays out. But Ohio State's not the worst really good team that you could play if you have to break in the offensive line due to how much the Buckeyes lost.
Yeah, outside of UNC transfer Bo Atkinson at edge, I think Ohio State is seemingly average by program standards up front. If I'm Steve Sarkisian, I'm probably preaching the entire fall camp. We're going to try to line up and run right at Ohio State. That's what Michigan's done the last several years, and that's been good enough despite not having all that great offensive talent. But you think about what Texas brings back, even outside of Arch Manning, Trey Wisner at running back, C.J. Baxter's back after missing last season with an injury. So I do think Texas has an early edge in this game in the run game. Now, will that matter against a new look offensive line? That remains to be seen.
And 9-3. Go ahead, Bud.
On Atkinson as well, like I think he's a promising player, but that's a guy who really feasted on bad teams last year. He had 7.5 sacks, 3.5 against a horrendous Florida State offensive line, which had basically quit. 1 against UConn, again, a really bad offensive line. Virginia had one of the worst offensive lines in the country again. He picked up 2 against them, and then 1 against the James Madison team that basically all the good players were playing for Indiana. So he did nothing against the good teams they faced in terms of sack production. So man, if I'm Sark and I'm like, man, Ohio State's banking on Bo Atkinson being the dude, I feel pretty good.
So, Bud, love the shirt. He's agreeing with us and saying that Texas is going to go in there and they're going to hammer at this Ohio State team. If once they get this gelling and continuity together, and like you said, Coach wants them to get out there in that Austin heat to get running to make sure that they can survive their entire year. And again, on the defensive side, they've done enough in terms of getting depth players, getting 5 new transfer portal guys come in. Again, that's depth, continuity, and getting it right. But you said something earlier. Touch me again. You said 9-3. What does success look like for Texas this year? And is a 9-3 good enough?
I think if I'm a Texas fan, I'm pretty ticked off if they go 9-3 against this schedule. Because, you have 5 games that should be automatic wins under any circumstance, right? Like, there's no excuse to lose those games. And if I'm a Texas fan, if I'm a Texas booster, dude, you better be going 3-2 or better against Ohio State, Florida, Oklahoma, Georgia, and A&M. I think if they go 9-3, just like last year, if they had gone 9-3, they would have been out. They would have not have made it. So like they needed to win that game against A&M and did. So I think you better be 10-2. It's not their fault, but they get the easy SEC draw this year.
It's a part of it.
Yeah, those 3 true road games against borderline preseason top 10 teams, probably unanimously if Florida gets in the AP's preseason top 10. I mean, you have to win probably 2 or 3 of those games. Bud mentioned it earlier. I see Texas's floor being 10-2 this season. And it's a little afraid, if you're a Buckeyes fan right now, you're a little scared of that first game against Texas because of what Texas brings in on defense. Ohio State also has 4 new offensive linemen. They have several draft picks up front too. And Colin Simmons, those guys, I mean, Anthony Hill Jr., one of the SEC's best linebackers, those are 2 pass rushers who are going to get after Julian Sayin or Kine Holtz or whoever Ryan Day decides to start in week 1. So it's definitely one of opening weekend's best matchups. And I think right now, the early line being Ohio State by 3.5, there's some high value there on the Longhorns.
Now, we've heard Arch. There's more players at Texas than just Arch Manning. But I'm going to come to you first. Give me a name by the end of the year. Everyone in the United States is going to say, you know what? He's that guy. Impactful player at Texas.
I think like diehard college football fans already know this. Recruitniks certainly know this. This is why you should watch The Ultimate Show. This is why you should follow recruiting. But Colin Simmons is an absolute beast off the edge. It takes a little while for defensive players to kind of enter that national consciousness, but I think they will know who he is. He is a real problem. And, if I'm Ohio State, I'm a lot more worried about him than if Texas should be worried about like a Bo Atkinson.
Yeah, I'll go 4-5-star Ryan Wingo. I've already mentioned, quarterback wide receiver tandem, Manning and Wingo being one of the best ones coming into the 2025 season. I think Ryan is going to have a 1,000-yard season. He's not maybe as talented speed-wise as Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith being a total package, but Ryan Wingo is certainly a guy who's going to lead this Texas wideout room that's got a couple new portal transfers as well. So I like Ryan Wingo being a breakout player nationally for the Horns.
Man, fellas, I got both of y'all here. Now, my seat is hot. We like to get to these burning questions. Y'all going to stick around and just join me. Y'all can get to them. Let's go. The first burning question off top. Okay, Young from our chat says, who could be the number 1 team heading into next year? Brad, I'm going to go to you next.
I always go defend national champions unless they just lost significant talent. And while Ohio State did lose a bevy of starters, they still have the best offensive player in the country in Jeremiah Smith, arguably the best defensive player in the country in Caleb Downs. And I do like some of the small portal additions Ohio State has. So we're going to learn a lot more about the Ohio State being a preseason number 1 team when they play Texas. But right now in mid-May, I'm going with the defending champs.
I'm going to go with Georgia, and I not confidently. I think there are really probably 7, 8, maybe 9 teams you could go with for this and make a real, like, not fake argument for. But I'm going to pick Georgia. I think they've upgraded their receiving core in a massive way, especially over what it actually was on the field last year. Like, they were having to have Arian Smith run real routes when he's just a gadget guy because a lot of their guys they were counting on got arrested. I think they fixed that problem. They're a lot better at receiver this year. I think they'll be healthier along the offensive line. And I do have a lot of trust in Kirby Smart to cobble together at least a decent defense there in Athens.
Yeah, I'm all a criteria guy, and I'd like to check all the boxes. So I'm going to go with Clemson because I think they check all my boxes. Head coach, check. Play caller, 3-year run with your quarterback, Kate Klubnik. We all think that he's going to end up in New York in terms of being a Heisman Trophy candidate. Check. We also talk about continuity offensively. They're getting back majority of their offensive line, and those receivers are daggone good football players. We sat here and tried to talk about the best duo of combination of between receiver and quarterback. Brad, you and I sat here and argued, not that they were that good. We're trying to select which one of the 3 receivers was supposed to be, or we believe, that are number 1.
Yeah, Antonio Williams was your guy, and I think TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco, 2 5-stars last year as true freshmen, are equally talented. I mean, I don't have any issue with Kay Klubnik being the guy, the Clemson preseason number 1 favorite. I had Clemson number 4 in my poll. I'm actually more surprised at Bud's Georgia at number 1 pick. I've got Georgia 6th in the preseason. I don't think Gunnar Stockton's a top 5 SEC Maybe not the guy Georgia expected to be the 2025 starter either, after rumors of, trying to keep Carson Beck in tow in Athens. So, and I'm not all concerned, I'm not totally convinced that the wide receiver room is upgraded either, because we mentioned Arian Smith being a gadget guy. What's Zachariah Branch? He's exactly a gadget guy. The last couple of years, special teams player only at USC, who doesn't have a route tree yet. So, if Georgia's leaning on him to be their wide receiver one, we could have some passing game issues between the hedges.
I'm not even convinced that Stockton is anything special. I didn't have him in my top 5 for SEC quarterbacks and didn't even really seriously consider it. To be honest, like when Smoke and I debated that here, I was like, okay, to me, he's not amazing as an SEC quarterback, but I think he can operate the offense. I do think they're massively upgraded at receiver over what they actually had on the field last year. Like Dylan Bell is another guy you have to scheme open. They go and they took the leading receiver for A&M, Thomas, who I think is a pretty nice player. They get Colby Young back. Like he's back on the team this year. I think it really changes what they have on the outside. I think it changes what they have in the red zone. Both those tight ends are back and a year older, so you're going to have 2 like 22, 23-year-old tight ends who Georgia likes, quite a bit. But like there are so many teams you could pick here to where I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't really agree, but that's not crazy. Like none of us picked Texas, and Texas definitely could be it. Maybe you really love what Oregon has. Bama, I think potentially if the quarterback really hits, they could be the number 1. Penn State, I don't hate that. Like Notre Dame, you can make an argument. Clemson, it probably cuts off like LSU. You'd have to really sell me that you think they're okay with losing all that offensive line talent. But I could see it. Like what was it? 9 teams we just named? College football is so fun this year because it does feel wide open. Like there's a lot of things. If this goes right and that goes right, man, this team they've got it.
Brad, you see what he just did? He just tried to put that Jedi mind trick on both of us again. We both pushed back against Georgia, and he said, you know what? Let me go Texas. Then he said, you know what? Let me go up north to Penn State. He said, you know what? There's about 9 teams. So still yet, I don't think he really feels comfortable with his Georgia pick just because nobody's buying any stock on Gunner at all.
I'll say this too, man. If there's any preseason to pick Penn State as the top team, this would be it. This is James Franklin's best roster in Happy Valley. 2,000-yard rushers returning. You convinced Drew Aller to return, who might have been the top quarterback pick in this year's draft over Cam Ward had he been to the combine and declared. So despite Penn State losing some dogs on defense, I like some of the defensive linemen they return. There's very good linebacker play with Rojas coming back too. And Penn State's schedule is conducive to success. They don't have to beat Ohio State during the regular season to get to the playoff. You just got to get hot in December. That's what matters in the expanded era.
I agree with that fully. Yeah, there's so many teams like, okay, if this goes right and that goes right, they could like win it all. I don't think there's now somebody probably will emerge as a crazy dominant team, and maybe it's Texas because they have a guy like Arch who has a lot more upside than a Gunner Stockton has. But so many of these teams have legitimate questions to where they can go 12-0, they can go 8-4, right? Like if a couple guys get banged up, it's hard to keep amazing depth now in the transfer portal era because guys want to play and other teams will pay them to come play and actually give them playing time.
Man, fellas, I appreciate both of y'all, Bud and my left-hand cousin and my third cousin, Brad Crawford. I appreciate you guys joining us today. If you want more of my guy, Bud Elliott, he's on the Cover 3 podcast, wherever you get your podcast from, on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursdays at 11 Eastern Time. This is the ultimate college football show. Join us on Wednesday, 4 p.m., 3 Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. Check us back out. I'm Smoke Dixon, ultimate college football show.